If you've recently started on a creative path, be it making music, art, videos, you name it, you might disappointedly look at your work and think to yourself, man, I wish I was more talented. And even though movie wisdom and bedtime story fables tell us that hard work always beats talent, in my heart of hearts, I always kind of believed that no matter how hard you work, the talented dude would always have the advantage, especially if they worked hard themselves, right? Well, for the past 30 days, I decided to put that belief to the test and try my hand at something I have absolutely no talent for, drawing. And now that I've had the chance to compare that to my many years of music making, I've come out the other side thinking that not only is talent overrated, but that being untalented might actually be a huge advantage for developing a new skill. In this video, I want to share my findings comparing about 30 years or so of talent-based music making versus just 30 days of relentless hard work and learning how to draw with absolutely no previous experience or talent at all. If you're already subscribed, warm welcome back, my friend. If this is your first time here, hi, welcome to the Midlife Synthesis. Let's get started. Okay, so let me give you a bit of context here first. Two of my biggest passions in life have always been music and animation. Ever since I was a kid, I love spending hours listening to my favorite songs, just as much as I love watching cartoons and anime. However, there was a moment when music took the driver's seat in my life. Specifically, the moment that I realized that I could instinctively make music without any real music theory knowledge or formal training. I had what you may call talent. Now please bear in mind, I'm no Mozart, nor do I have perfect pitch or crazy Jacob Collier level abilities, but armed mostly with my musical intuition, I've been able to play in a few bands, successfully make and release a couple of albums, get some radio play, and make an entire YouTube channel about synths. On the other hand, my passion for animation and comics had always been limited to a consumer standpoint, as I was convinced that I had absolutely no talent whatsoever for drawing. So I never really bothered with developing that skill, until about a month ago, that is. Over the last 30 days, I decided I wanted to really put the effort into learning how to draw. In the spirit of really taking things seriously, I promptly enrolled in a structure online course and I began practicing for hours on the daily. I started learning basic shapes, circles, ovals, squares. I filled up page after page of this stuff. And while I was drawing, it got me thinking of those times that I tried to practice the basics of music, like writing scales, for example. I recall that usually after a few short repetitions of said scales, it wouldn't take long before I was hearing a new song in my head and I would quickly abandon my practice session to complete my new brilliant masterpiece. The temptation to move on to something cooler and start jamming was always just too tempting, so I would end up skipping the drill entirely. Getting distracted by a better idea proved to be my nemesis when I was practicing music, but thankfully, I never had that problem with drawing. And that's because even if I was tempted to draw something like Space Marine from scratch, I knew I had no way of actually executing upon that idea, no way of putting my homework aside to start jamming, so to speak, so I kept on drawing my ovals. Now, funnily enough, since that's as far as my ability allowed me to go, I found that drawing these basic shapes was really fun and relaxing, especially since I didn't feel that I was missing out on drawing something more impressive. As the days passed on, I moved on to drawing more complicated things, like trying to emulate volume and shading. As I started progressing in my lessons, I began drawing dynamic poses and gestures and learning about human anatomical proportions. I'd always heard that drawing hands was hard, but I never knew that drawing legs was just as difficult. Since I had no real intuition to rely on, I scoured the internet for tutorials and tips on how to get better at the things I couldn't do right before advancing to the next steps. I started messing around with perspective, and I even joined the infamous Draw a Box challenge. I was learning, I was seeing real progress, and a few days ago, I realized something that has probably held my musical progress back, maybe for years. By the way, I want to shout out today's sponsor, Analog Cases. Ever wonder how and where I store all of my gear on the channel when it's not on my desk? Well, I keep it all safely stacked and protected from dust and my toddlers with Analog Cases. Analog Cases makes custom cases for most popular synths and group boxes, as well as desktop stands, performance stands, and my favorite, the TrackPack Backpack, which can easily fit an Ableton Push 3 or an MPC Live 2, and was voted this year's tastiest backpack to chew on by Milo, my French bulldog. Use my affiliate link in the description to get a discount on your next purchase. Thank you so much, Analog Cases, for your constant support. Now, back to the video. As I was saying, I realized something, and that's that I never really did this beginner boot camp for my music. I never really painstakingly studied the basic shapes and forms that make the whole song work. It's like I was so confident with my talent for writing stories that I never bothered to study the alphabet or proper grammar. Now what sucks about that is that I tend to drop out of the flow state constantly because of these gaps in my musical knowledge, and they end up becoming roadblocks in my pathway towards finishing a song. Now I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. It's not that I haven't put in hundreds of hours into learning and practicing to become a better musician. I've really worked hard to hone my music and skills, but I realize now that over the years, I've also skipped over a ton of the basics a bunch of times because I thought I already understood them. I was drawing spheres based on my intuition before I ever practiced drawing circles. And that's kind of my whole point here, is that talent can become a double-edged sword when it gives you the opportunity or the allowance to neglect basic yet very important steps that you think you don't need. Especially as a teenager, I ignored so much information thinking music theory would actually hurt my natural music making ability by making it more rigid, boxing it in, which I now realize was absolute nonsense. I look at my reasoning in hindsight and realize that that was my ego talking, my pride. That's another sneaky thing about talent. It can make you think you're way better than you actually are, and that makes it even more difficult for you to see exactly where your skills are lacking. In my time learning how to draw, I haven't skipped a single step. I can't. Mostly because I'm so convinced I need every single fundamental I can get, or I'll never be able to get even remotely decent at drawing. And the more I learn, the more tools I have, the more free I feel when I'm drawing, which is kind of the opposite of where I ended up right now in my musical journey, where I feel like I've boxed myself into the same familiar patterns, mostly due to my ignorance of the broader possibilities out there, starting with the most fundamental building blocks of music. Thankfully, there is always time to change that, to fill in those gaps. But first, you have to recognize that they are there. So, in conclusion, my message for you today is this: forget talent. Hell, forget hard work even, because I did work hard on my music, but I was missing a couple of very important ingredients. Do you want to know what I think the real secret sauce is? Curiosity mixed in with a splash of humility. Curiosity for how things work, how they mesh together, how they make a whole, and the humility to admit to yourself that you don't know all the answers, that there is nothing out there that is too basic for you to learn and practice. As long as you keep being curious, you'll never cease to marvel at the new possibilities that constantly open up before you. And as long as you stay humble, your mind will be open enough to receive that information and get help from others around you so you can continue to improve upon yourself. As a complete side note, I highly suggest you take up more than just one form of creative outlet like I did now with drawing. Everything I'm learning and feeling now while I'm drawing has somehow managed to bleed into my understanding and joy of making music, and I really do wish this state of wonder and happiness to you as well. If you're still here and you enjoyed this video, please remember that you can always support my channel with something as simple as just clicking the like button, subscribing, or leaving me a comment, even if it's just to say hi. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.